All righty. And I believe we're live. Hi, everybody. This is Betsy. Thank you for tuning in for our panel today about vocal health. We're really glad that you've joined us. I am welcoming three singers and experts, actually, very experienced performers, all of you. And some of you are also coaches and have other areas of expertise as well. So I'm very excited. We'll start with Britta. Will you please introduce yourself?
I'm Britta Sterling. I have a background as a classical singer. I got my first degree in vocal performance from CSUN. I'm also a speech therapist. So I got my master's in communication disorders from Georgia Southern at Armstrong in Savannah. And I've been a speech therapist practicing for the last 5 years, 6 years almost now. And I do specialize in voice and treating voice disorders. I've done a lot of extra education for that. I've studied under Dr. Ingo Tietze in his vocology program. And I've also continued to sing and study throughout that too. And so I've sung with local companies and opera, musical theater, choral works, stuff like that.
Wow, thank you so much. Carolyn.
Hello, I'm Carolyn Val-Schmidt, and I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Betsy. Okay, I'll give you the fun highlights. I got my 2 degrees in vocal performance at the University of Illinois, in the home of Betsy herself, Champaign-Urbana. And I went up to New York City a long time ago and built my career there. Let's see, I was at the Juilliard School in the American Opera Center. And from that, or before that, I can't remember now which, I was in the master class of Maria Callas. So that was pretty neat. And she was one of my idols. And I'd gotten in trouble in college trying to be Leontine Price II. That was a little soon for somebody who was only 21. Anyway, I went on to I was in New York, and Callas and I have made my debut at the Metropolitan Opera a long time ago, and in an American premiere of Benjamin Britten's last opera.
Wow.
And I was in the American premiere, leading lady in the American premiere of Virgil Thompson's last opera. And that was Lord Byron at Juilliard.
Wow.
So that was fun. And then I went on and I sang in a bunch of opera companies and major roles and lots of Puccini and Mozart and so on, and was a happy camper. Also done some musical theater, a number of shows. And the last thing I did was my second national tour of The Sound of Music, and it was starring Debbie Boone. And I sang the Mother Abbess. And every performance before I walk out for the last scene in the first act, where I sing Climb Every Mountain, I just gave up a little prayer that I hope that I could be the vessel for whoever needed to be inspired by that beautiful song.
Oh, yeah.
And anyway, so then I went to Colorado and I did a lot of singing with orchestras and choruses and recitals and a bunch of teaching. And I was an adjunct teacher at University of Colorado in Boulder. And then I came to LA 12 years ago, and I've been doing some singing, not so much now, and certainly teaching. And then I met Betsy in particular, and we got to work on some musical theater music that she was doing, so that I'm a singer's acting coach.
That's right.
And how to move your body and how to look at the music and how the music is telling you what's going on in your mind and your heart. And because so many singers are really appreciative of the words, but not so much the music itself. And now I've evolved even more, or in another area, and I'm a speakers coach for speakers. And I say, I help them bring their speaking voice alive And why talk in black and white when you can speak in Technicolor?
Good.
So I use my vocal anatomy experience and also my performance experience. Okay, I'm stopping now.
This
okay.
is awesome. Well, we're going to talk about speaking for about the first half of the program and singing for about the second half. I'm going to try to keep it to that. So we're really happy to have both of you on board to talk to us that you've studied both of these subjects so extensively. And Beraud, please tell us about yourself.
Hi, I'm Beraud. I'm a singer-songwriter. So yeah, mostly a songwriter, top liner. I do session singing. I'm trying to do musical theater, trying to prepare for that during the quarantine. And I've struggled with my voice my whole life, both my speaking voice and my singing voice. So I'm very excited to be part of this panel and learn from you guys.
Thank you for coming. And Beraud also plays guitar. She went to film school, she told us, which I had not learned before that. So she's very well-versed in a lot of skills that some of them I am still catching up to, and guitar I may never get there. But my name is Betsy. I'm coming to you live from Billings, Montana today, where I'm taking a little vacation and actually saw some community theater. So actually was doing some exercises with my friend in the car on the way to her performance yesterday. And that was a lot of fun. I was a voice and piano student and a choir singer from a very young age in Champaign, Illinois. Champaign and Urbana. Did most of my musical training there growing up, and in Charleston, Illinois, until I was a student at Wheaton College in the Conservatory of Music. I continued with private lessons and singing in choir and doing opera on and off, all my life really. I've done since then. And I've also studied journalism, so that's kind of jump around, and definitely have a real love for both opera and musical theater, as well as I really like pop music, and I'd like to do more session singing. I like to play around with my voice and figure out what it can do. But I'm like Beraud, I definitely have insecurities about whether I'm still, doing the best, even though I know the basics and the fundamentals. I feel like our voices change a lot over time as well. So there's always adjustments to make. So I will bring us into our first question, and we'll go to Britta first for this one. What are the basic principles for good vocal health?
Well, gosh, that's a big question. I would say, so the basic principles for vocal health, it really depends on how you're utilizing your voice, as a speaker or a singer, but there are some basic underlying things that are going to kind of apply to both. It would basically being able to fulfill your, what you need to do with your voice in, whether that's, singing, in a show, whether that is, session singing, whether that's talking all day, if you say you work as a telemarketer or a lawyer, and you need, or teacher, and you need to speak in front of a classroom all day. So fulfilling those vocal needs that you have in your daily life, being able to do that without feeling vocally tired at the end of the day, without any kind of loss of voice, being able to do that in a healthy way, understanding your own needs for voice production and doing it in a healthy way that's keeping your voice functioning in its hopefully optimal condition. I don't think we ever really get to the peak condition, but as optimal as you can. And the ways that we can do that are through a lot of different things, just general health, things that are as simple as staying hydrated, getting enough sleep, which, varies person to person. For some people, it can be dietary changes. Like if you're someone like me who has reflux, staying on a diet that's going to, keep your reflux kind of under control as much as you can, or being on medication for it. And then also just voice production, making sure that you're speaking in a resonant, healthy place, and singing with technique that isn't going to overwork or strain your vocal mechanism. And all of that's so complicated and so individual to each person. But I would say basically just keeping, you know, a healthy body, also extremely individual to each person, is going to keep your voice healthy. You know, having healthy habits, obviously avoiding things like smoking or being around airborne chemicals or anything like that could really damage your voice. Yeah, staying hydrated, getting good sleep, and then doing your best to produce speech or singing in a way that is healthy and to not overuse it as well as much as you can. But yeah,
I want Carolyn to ask this first. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just saying, but it's such a unique individual journey for each person to get to that place.
Absolutely. So before I go on to Carolyn, I just want to ask you really quickly, is there a standard, what is standard normal use? Like, say you have to constantly use your voice just for speaking. Did you say that should never be more than 4 or 5 hours per day of like
constant? I mean, I don't think there is a standard really, because each person has different capabilities. You know, what might be vocally tiring for one person isn't going to be, you know, the same for another person, one person. And also it depends on how you're utilizing your voice, how you're producing your speech. You could, right, if you were speaking, you know, if you're speaking in a healthy way, you could probably speak for, you know, for longer periods of time, but it just varies by person. Some people are going to be able to go, you know, to speak all day and be fine. And one thing, so in my speech therapy practice, I try to focus on vocal habilitation, which is opposite. It's different from rehabilitation, which is where if you damage your voice, we're working with you to, you know, heal that. But habilitation is, we want to work with you to get your voice to where it needs to be so that you can utilize it for your jobs, your unique needs, what you do in your daily life, to get it to that pinnacle place so that you can, you know, use it for your needs. So I would say there's no set number, you know, it really varies by person, and you just have to go on your own vocal journey to find that out for yourself.
Yeah, I've never heard of a set number, but I just wondered if there was something that in your, so thank you for answering that. Carolyn, basic principles.
Okay, Britta brought up such a good point about how everything is individual. And the basic health is so important. I remember saying to students who want to be a singer, I say, well, first you need your health. I had a friend who was a fabulous singer, and for 1 year, her arthritis was so bad, she was in bed for a year. And still she came out singing. And a student that was walking in the Rocky Mountains and fell and messed up her jaw, and they said, you'll never talk again. And then she has this beautiful Wagnerian voice coming out. So those are kind of extreme, I must say.
That's amazing.
So I was reading something on the internet the other day about singing, and one fellow said, the 3 important aspects of singing are breath, and resonance. So it's like the foundation of anything. The breath is the foundation, and allowing it in and then using it consistently is so important. And it is the breath that allows us to have our throats be a warm, moist, passive pipe, so that we're not using that. And when we're wanting to share something, you know, we really want to get in there and use our throats a lot, and we forget that we don't have to do that. So any speaker would behoove themselves to take some singing lessons. I think that would be really helpful. And then the last part is resonance. So if you're talking like this all the time, and it's pretty low pitch, and it's almost vocal fry type stuff, which a lot of people do. And particularly, I notice when you're on TV and you're saying the news and so on, these young gals are talking, kills me. My vocal cords that just reject the sound. Anyway, so you want, as one teacher said, in resonance, mask and head, or bang and buck. Bang and, no, what was it? Oh, I can't even remember now. How funny. Anyway, I had a student who spoke on the phone all the time, and she was having difficulty. It was her day job. And so I said, honey, You need to use more breath when you're speaking. It's real easy to get intimate when you've got something. And when we're on a cell phone, even we're on perhaps Zoom, it's real easy to get intimate and not using our breath. That's another reason why, as Britta said, getting enough sleep is so important. So we have our energy. So I suggested that she speak on a higher pitch and she used more air. And the next week she came back and said it was totally different. So it's learning what tools we can use and incorporating them so that they become habits. Yeah, I'm very lucky to have the habits. So I think that's the basic thing I want to say about that. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, you covered a lot of great stuff there. Thank you. And Beraud, thoughts?
God, I've had a lot of thoughts when listening. Yeah. Let me see if I can remember anything.
That's okay.
Yeah.
What are the basic principles? If you were just to tell somebody really quickly, what is the best thing to do for your voice? What are the things that you absolutely swear by?
I like a lot of what Britta said about resonance and stuff. That's something I was never taught. Like, I mean, we're not really taught how to talk. We just we talk and that's it. Like, I was never taught about that. I had problems with me losing my voice and stuff because I wasn't speaking correctly. Like, I was very I don't know how to call it, very head voicey kind of speaking instead of resonating.
Breathy?
So that's something that I'm learning to do. And I've gotten a lot better at it because I also teach as my day job. So I'm talking nonstop. So I just try to focus and I don't even know, trying to belt talk instead of how I would naturally talk. I've had to retrain myself. Yeah, and I'm curious to learn more about what you mean by breath, Carolyn.
Well, I think the term that you were thinking about, you were trying to bring up when you were talking was, you said heady. I think maybe breathy. And what makes it breathy tone is when the vocal cords don't totally meet. Mm-hmm. And that depends on age, and that's part of a girl's maturation point of when her vocal cords finally start to totally connect instead of just part of it. But we could all talk like Marilyn Monroe if we wanted to, and I have my students do that so they know what they don't want to do.
That's right, and the way it feels. I mean, I think what really is important, I think there's many things, and like you said, it's a journey for all of us. It's a journey. We learn to talk first, usually without being told anything about our vocal anatomy, and we go years knowing, and some of us start singing. I mean, I started singing in a choir when I was 6, so nobody was teaching me anything about what to do with my breath in that choir. So it took years before I was being told, look, all the work that you should be doing is really below your shoulders, not above your shoulders. And so I was still unlearning, in college and after, I was still taking a lot of tense breaths you could see in my neck, as an adult, even though I'd been singing, and playing piano, doing in all kinds of different environments. And, and part of it actually is very emotional, right? It's psychological. It's what you think about. So a lot of the principles have to do with learning how to relax and take your, confidence, sort of creating confidence about your own performance and your own presence. So I would say that, hydration, sleep, all those things are really important. Breath is hugely important. Where you're breathing from, just visualizing where you're breathing from and feeling imagining the breath filling your whole body, not just the upper space where you're trying to focus the sound. That's the difference for me between making a healthy noise and then a noise that might sound okay, but anybody who's trained would be like, gosh, she's killing herself. Don't do that to your voice. And I mean, as I love pop music, my teacher used to always say she would not take cheerleaders as students for a while because she didn't like the way they were using their voice. And then she said, and then I, changed my mind. I decided I would teach them how to use their voices properly for singing. So those things are all connected. I said we're going to talk about speaking, but we still fell into singing early on, which is fine. I'm sure we have more singers watching us than we know. We do have quite a few people watching us. So thank you for tuning in. If you have a comment or question you'd like to leave, I'm trying to pay attention. So feel free to jump in with questions. We'll try to throw them out there. So, okay, our second question is, if I have to spend a lot of time speaking loudly or projecting on stage, or maybe you're a teacher like Beraud, what is the healthiest way to do that and not harm my vocal cords? We'll go to Carolyn first this time.
Well, the answer is always at first the breath.
You know, I'd say to my students, particularly if they're having a confidence challenge when they're trying something new, I say, when in doubt, sing out. And it's the same thing for when we're talking. The thing is, we don't talk from our necks, we talk from deep from our whole torso, which is what you're saying. Do you know what? I've just forgot. This is so much like the first question, actually. If you have to talk a lot, how do you do it?
Sure.
One thing is, you know, it's good to, you could practice reading something into a recorder of some kind and listen to yourself and see if it feels, if it sounds free and if it feels free. How do you talk for a long time? You want to find a good pitch for your voice where you're comfortable and you can sustain that for a while. I remember I only once did I go to, what are those singing things that the Indians do, the Hindus do? They have there's a term for it, not Qatari. Anyway, you go and you sing these chants and people are just thrilled with it and so on. Well, it hung around E and F above middle C. And I thought, this is the last time I'm doing that because it just wasn't comfortable for me to hang around there. I think that's all I have to say on that.
Well, a good vocal coach, I mean, I'm not saying this is the plug to sell voice lessons to anyone, but, you know, if you are using your voice a lot, I mean, it doesn't matter whether you are speaking or singing. A good vocal coach can help you find, you know, what is really comfortable and safe for your speaking range as well as your singing range. Britta, do you want to speak about that a little bit too?
Sure. I think I really agree with what Carolyn said about making sure that good breath is the foundation of speaking, especially if you're having to project, you know, if you're speaking on stage or if you're a teacher and you're kind of in the front of the classroom, like a, you know, college professor, you have a larger room. You know, I think making sure that you understand the process of breathing and taking a healthy breath and utilizing it well. Also making sure that you're not pushing too much air, because sometimes, and you see this more with singers than speakers, you can get, you know, tension from pushing too much air. So we want to make sure, like you said earlier, it's a passive moist tube. You know, we're using the breath, but everything is just coming out with, you know, as little tension as possible. And finding and generally knowing where your optimal speaking pitch is, especially if you're speaking for long amounts of time, is a really good idea. You don't want to speak, you know, because, and I speak lower than I should. I know this. I'm always working on it. It's an ongoing challenge for me. I think a lot of women in our generation do, generally. But if you're speaking for a long period of time, you do want to make sure that you're in and around that optimal pitch for yourself, because there, the more likely it could cause strain, you know. And a little trick that I heard once for, that I've heard many times actually, for finding your optimal speaking pitch area, and you're not going to know exactly, you know, your optimal pitch. You usually just kind of know like about what it feels like, where it is, you know, what it feels like to speak it. You're not going to, you know, be like, well, this is, you know, D right above middle C. And this is where, I mean, you could if you wanted to, but it wouldn't be very practical or useful. But one trick to kind of find that nice speaking range is to pretend that someone's calling you on the phone and you picked up the phone and the first thing, the way you answer the phone, hello, you know, or somebody's talking to you and you're listening and you're going, like, you know, they're talking and you're kind of, you're saying, and then you just extend that, So you should be like around up here, I should be a little higher than I actually usually speak. So that's a good trick to find that area, and just being in that healthy range, you know, taking time to take a good breath. So making sure that your speaking rate isn't going too quickly. Also, you want people to be able to understand you. That's another thing I always want to work on, is slowing my rate. So we all, even the professionals, struggle with this stuff. Yeah, so, you know, making sure you're utilizing breath correctly. I would also recommend first, you know, if you are a singer, take lessons and make sure you have a good teacher. If you are a speaker and you're not a singer, taking lessons is still, you know, voice lessons is extremely beneficial, or seeing a speech therapist. But just having that second pair of ears and someone to kind of help you and tell you, you know, what's going to work for you, so you can find that together. And it always helps to have somebody else and have that separate pair of ears and someone with experience to help you get to that place. And also, one really, really quick note, if you can, like if you're a teacher, or if you are maybe a lawyer, in some cases I think they allow them to do this, but like places where you need to like speak a lot and you need to project, see if you can get a microphone. Yeah. I tell teachers this all the time, get a microphone. Sometimes the school will pay for it and it will save your voice, you know, so you don't have to worry about that support and projecting. Obviously, if you're a singer, if you're an actor, depending on the theater space, you know, depending on the style of music, you're not going to have a microphone. That's not the style. But if you're a teacher, you know, and you want to save your voice and you've had issues, like try and get the mic, it's going to help. So yeah.
That's a really good point. Beraud, do you have any additional thoughts?
I just tried your trick, Britta, and I should be speaking around a B.
Oh, you tested the pitch. Nice.
Yeah. Nice. So, yeah, teachers with microphones too. Like, I think it's important to relax. I feel like I carry a lot of tension in my neck and my tongue. So like, be aware of that. And I remember when I was first like in drama classes, I couldn't project at all. And like, nobody ever taught me how to project, but they highly encouraged that I project. So what I ended up doing was that I just screamed everything. They'd be like, yes, perfect. I'm like, and I would hurt myself. I would hurt my throat and I wasn't doing it right. They weren't teaching me how to properly do it. So I'd just be like conscientious of the way you're projecting. Like, even like, if I'm like, I need to like do like a scream for something, like I have to like be aware of how I'm doing it, because otherwise my body will default to doing like a really unhealthy scream.
Yeah.
Or like a belt or whatever, especially talking. It's harder for me to talk healthy than it is for me to sing. Like if I think of talking in the way I think of singing, it helps a little bit, but I'm not really like trained enough to describe what I mean by that.
Thank you. No, that's super helpful. Yes, Carolyn.
Yeah, I have a couple other thoughts. One, the two terms that I wanted to trying to remember about the mask resonance and the head resonance are, as my teacher said, ring and rumble.
There you go.
To get that combination. And also, I loved what you said about talking on the hello and your hums. That was really neat idea, Britta. I've had students come for lessons and they're quite relaxed and mellow. Turns out they just drove over here in 15 minutes after taking a 2-hour nap. Well, I would say you have to do jumping jacks right now. You have to get your body awake and so on. I remember when I was singing with the Met Opera Guild and we were doing I guess it was a Met Studio, and we were doing Madame Butterfly. And one time I had to get up at 5:30 in the morning because we were doing it for school kids. And another thing I wanted to say was the first time I ever really sang with a mic was on tour. My first tour was with Debbie Boone. Well, maybe it was the second. Yes. Anyway, the point is that Debbie Boone was a popular singer. You light up my life. Yes. You give me hope to carry on.
Oh, that song.
Yeah, daughter of Pat Boone. And so she was the lead and she was doing Maria. So we all had to be mic'd. Isn't that interesting? It was the first time.
Wow.
So she didn't have that other training because she was used to being in a studio with a mic in front of her.
Oh, yeah.
And that's it. Yeah, I think that it's so interesting because I have not really done much session singing, but I enjoy it and it's fun. Every time I play around with it, I'm like, man, this is, it's fantastic. It's the life because everything gets picked up. My first time with the mic was with, I think for stage was Fiddler on the Roof. I played for Miss Sarah and we had those little like elastic headphone mics, and it's just like, I had like this ghost white makeup and then this little black random thing sticking out. But, that, who cares?
And for singers that are like classically trained, it takes a little bit of getting used to sing with the mic. We're so
considered a cheat. For some people, that's what I think is so weird about like the classical. They shouldn't be opposed to one another, but it's very hard moving from one to another and having like different modes of voice, because there is a certain different kind of sound that you're trying to achieve in each case. And then in a lot of cases people feel like, well, if you have to use a mic, that's,
I think it's a different, you're going to be doing different things with a microphone and different kinds of microphones, like a body mic as opposed to like a mic in a studio. You just have to know what those things are going to pick up in your voice, and you kind of know how you want to sing with each one, which takes a lot of experience. But it's important to take that into consideration, obviously, because otherwise you may not sound very good on each one, or you could overuse your voice in certain situations. I know when I first like sang with a mic a few times, because I definitely came from that classical, and choral background where we just never had microphones. I definitely oversang because I didn't really know that I didn't need to with that. So it's just, you have to just keep those things in mind. And I wanted to say, for when Beraud said that, she talked about that theater speaking, the speech for theater class, where, they wanted you to project, but they didn't really instruct you on how to project in a healthy way. Just, I would say like the biggest thing, especially for big, for singers that are just starting out or actors that are just starting out, it sounds like at that time, you were in school, you were training. If something hurts after you do it, which I feel like what you were describing would probably, I bet you were sore after those classes. If you feel like a sore throat after a speech class, after you practice, that's when you know that there are some things not being utilized in a way that isn't maybe optimal. Maybe you're utilizing that maybe we should try a different method, because if you're feeling that, there's some tension and we can build, bad habits that way. So you just always want to be aware of that. If it hurts, it shouldn't hurt. Singing should never hurt. Speaking should never hurt. So just keeping that in mind, so important.
Well, that's an interesting point. Let's talk about pain for a minute, and diagnosing pain, because if you and I, for sure, Britta, have this acid reflux thing that is so much fun that lots of singers struggle with. Yeah. And so if I wake up in the morning and my throat really hurts, it could just be from what I ate and didn't take care of it yesterday, or it could be because I overused my voice, or it could be because I'm using my voice wrong, or it could be because I'm talking to people who are hard of hearing all day. And, it could be a number of things. So how can you two give us some diagnostic, like how do I figure that out? Do I just have to keep trying different things until it feels better?
Yeah, you just have, in my experience and my own voice journey, there are a lot of factors that could play into those things. If you have reflux, if you have allergies, if you are in a situation where you might be engaging in vocal overuse, you just need to look at each one individually. If you think you have GERD, you can go to the doctor and they can check that out pretty easily and tell you.
GERD for those?
Oh, sorry, GERD. It's gastrointestinal reflux. It's basically reflux. Sorry. But if you have reflux, and you kind of notice the signs and you're like, oh, I wake up in the morning and I have this, sore throat, or I feel heartburn after I eat fried foods, going to get it checked out, maybe getting on medication. So it's, if you notice that when the weather changes, or during spring and summer, you have all these issues, you think maybe I have seasonal allergies, going to the doctor to get that checked out as well. And looking at your life, looking at your lifestyle. I do with voice clients, I do a lot of life surveys, basically, where you're looking, you're saying, okay, how many hours a day do I talk on the phone? how many hours a day am I speaking over people? You know, maybe they're a waitress and sometimes they have to be, you know, kind of yelling to be heard in a noisy restaurant. So you have to look at your life and think, what are the situations where maybe I'm, you know, speaking more loudly than usual? What's the situation where I have to speak at length? Was there a situation where maybe I'm exposed to smoke or, you know, other irritants? Looking at your whole life, taking in all of the, you know, and then thinking, how could these things be affecting my voice? What things could be affecting my voice negatively? Just taking that inventory and then tackling them one at a time, kind of separating it. And it's not easy, you know, but as people that, you know, our voice is so vital, it's so important to us, you know, to everyone, whether you're a singer, whether you are, you know, a professional voice user, you know, anybody, we all, it's our main mode of communication. So it's so important to take care of it and to really look at the whole picture like that.
That's good. Thank you. Carolyn?
I don't think I have too much to add to what Britta said. Again, this question is pretty much, how do you talk for a long time and feel okay? Oh, you were saying I wanted to talk about pain.
Yeah. If something hurts, yeah. What's the first thing that you would do to check it out and see what might be going wrong?
I always check the breath first. That's just the bottom line. And then it's a matter of, are you getting the breath and using it consistently, and using it more when you're going louder and using it more when you're going softer, and more when you're going higher and more when you're going lower. It's just breath. Yeah. It's just a continuity of that. I remember, we all probably remember when we were in school, we were taught, you don't want to sing to the second row, you want to sing to the second balcony.
That's good.
And I was a school teacher, and I did teach classes, and I taught all through the day. And I think that I was just used to using my breath and used to using projection. And I wasn't speaking in a breathy way, so there was a focus to the tone. Mm-hmm. And it was also high enough that I didn't get tired or didn't be scratchy. So
that's good.
I think that, again, we want to just be as natural as possible. You were talking about, Betsy, about babies when we were babies. Well, the babies didn't have to have any lessons on how to use their breath. By golly, they got it and they used it. And the whole neighborhood knew. Right. It was no problem. So much of what I have done as a teacher is peel off the tensions of people. And sometimes it's merely psychological, and sometimes it's physical too.
That's right.
And
Beraud, I want to come to you next, and then we'll come back to you, Britta. I've got some things to say too. Beraud?
Oh, I actually was like listening to a baby cry the other day, and I'm like, that baby's damaging their voice. I didn't necessarily like know, like,
guys. So their mucosal layers, like around their vocal folds, are thicker. And I think there's like some structural differences. So babies actually, like, they can't damage their voices. They're built that way. They're built so that like there's been research done. Yeah, like they can cry. That's why they can cry for so long. But it's, you know, it's on purpose so that they can cry without losing their voice or damaging their voices. But there's, I think like the mucosal lining's a little thicker on like around the vocal folds. And I'm trying to, there's like on top of the vocal folds. And there's some other structural differences, but they're built to cry and not have damage. But that changes as we get older, which is why even a small child, like a 4 or 5 year old, they can be out on the playground screaming their lungs off and they can hurt their voice. And I've had young clients like that, actually. So, but yeah, babies generally can.
That's fascinating. I did not know that. Beraud, did you have some more to say about that stuff?
Yeah, so like that's good that they have a safety net, because I'm like, that doesn't mean they know how to cry. It just means like they are crying doesn't mean it's necessarily like
well, but they also know how to communicate different sounds and different kinds of pain in a way that actually most adults sort of forget and unlearn. So babies have a lot to teach us just by listening to their cry. And actually, you know what, something that's fascinating too, I don't know if you all know this, well, Britta does, but you know how Pasadena Opera is like run by a couple of neuroscientists? Yeah. And I went to Susanna? I think I've gone to at least two of their shows, and they had like a pre-show talk about like primal crying and like babies crying, like those, you know. And I think that's one of the things that, you know, is so important, is like, especially if you're a theater person, you've got to know how to come from that deep self that doesn't care about technique at certain points, right? Don't you think you have to sort of just completely let it go and be willing to give this like horrible, ugly scream in certain roles, in certain situations? You might be able to fake it. I don't know how to do that. Like, you know, I honestly think there's certain times when we have to sort of let it all go. But Britta, maybe you have something to say
about that. Yeah. So for screaming, there is a healthy way to do screaming, and it involves using your false vocal folds, which are like their picture. I have a text. So good. See if I can find something. But they're around your actual vocal folds. I don't know if I can. I'm trying to find it. I think the anatomy is.
I've never been coached on screaming. I will say that it's probably a big lack, but it's not that often. But I have had roles where I played like the demon possessed girl in the Crucible. You know, nobody taught me how to do that properly.
Well, Britta is looking.
I'm looking, but
I certainly know that in major opera houses, when they're doing Tosca, the lead tenor sometimes has someone from the chorus do the screaming off stage for him.
That's smart.
That's smart.
But basically, so they're just like, they're not your vocal folds, but they're around your vocal folds. And you basically utilize those, like you're kind of vibrating your false vocal folds, and it feels like a throat massage when you do it right. And you can get like a really good scream sound, but you're not utilizing your vocal folds at all. You're utilizing the false ones. A lot of like metal singers will do that. And so that they can do their screaming and not, you know, night after night and not hurt themselves. And there's a few SLPs that like specialize in teaching it. I experimented with trying to do it, and I think I did it correctly like a couple times, but like, you know it when you get it. I don't think I would have to study more to actually teach it, but it is a fascinating concept. It's a really good way to do stage screams and stuff like that, so you're not hurting yourself.
I'm gonna look that up later. We've got about 15 minutes left, so Beraud, did you have anything you want to add before we move on to another question?
I did want to learn from you guys, like, how do you know you have acid reflux? Because what if you don't have any symptoms? Like, you don't.
I will say, okay, the way that I learned that I had acid reflux was because when I was a voice major, we went to Loyola's vocal department, like the medical department, and they scoped all of our vocal cords. So we all went home with a picture. So it was a professional, it was a doctor that told me that I had acid reflux. I didn't know where this pain was coming from. So I did know I had some weird pain, but I kind of thought I was just misusing my voice, and it wasn't bad enough where I worried about it that much. I just ignored it. So, and I would like to say this, Britta has some more, I'm sure, to add, but like for me, it's just a swollen, seeing that your vocal cords are a little bit more swollen than they should be.
But does that necessarily mean reflux, or could it be that you're misusing your voice?
It could be both. So I'm going to let Britta talk, but I just want to say a few things about, because we didn't mention this about basic vocal health, and I think it's important. I don't know if we'll ever get back to it, but I don't say it now. Don't forget that caffeine will dry out your vocal cords, that there are certain things that you shouldn't eat after 9 p.m. Like, here's the basic stuff that probably is good for a lot of us. I cannot follow all these rules. I really tried. But I have really high metabolism. I need to eat like constantly. I'm not addicted to caffeine, but you know, there's some things like tomatoes, nightshade plants, you know, and certain things that you shouldn't if you look at the whole list, it's like mint, chocolate, and like you're just like, I can't give all these things. These are the things that make life fun, especially like, I mean, singers love Italy and Italian food is a thing. So just be aware. There's also other things, medication, other things you can do. But yeah, that the major way that I knew was from pain, but I'll let Britta speak to it more.
Yeah, some people can have silent reflux where you don't have any symptoms really, but it is affecting, it's, if you're a singer especially, it is probably, you know, it's affecting your vocal mechanism. You just go to a doctor, you know, they should be able to diagnose it. Just go to somebody that, you know, can scope you and check it out. So you can go to like ENTs can look at that.
Because it's really wearing away your esophagus and specific parts of your esophagus, right? So it is really important
yeah,
to be aware and to know.
And your vocal folds being, you know, your vocal cords and the areas around being swollen wouldn't be the only sign. They would see other signs and be able to see like, oh, that's reflux. So going to a doctor to confirm it, you know, if you feel like there are some issues, that's one of the things that they like to rule out, you know. But if you're having, and this is one thing I wanted to say as well, is that if you are having regular pain when singing, if you're having regular pain when, you know, speaking and you have a job where you have to talk a lot, you know, don't, you know, hold back from getting it checked out. I know it's hard because not everybody has, you know, insurance and not everybody has access to that. And I really do understand that it's difficult, but if you can, going to see a laryngologist to check that out, you want them to be a laryngologist, is a really good idea. And so they can look at, because they can look at everything and they can kind of rule things out, like maybe it isn't reflux, but maybe you have some, you know, maybe muscle tension dysphonia or some, you know, like they're going to see what's going on. They'll be able to look at the whole picture. So if you can, you know, and you're having consistent, persistent, you know, pain and vocal issues, it's always good to get it checked out.
Thank you. I want to say one more thing too about general vocal health that I think that needs to be said too, is that one thing that also happened right after we all went and had our vocal cords scoped is that some of my singing classmates were, you know, basically sentenced to like total vocal rest because they had found serious problems. And so if you are able to set aside any amount of time, you know, per week, whether it's 2 hours or 5 hours, right, that gives you a chance to really heal some things. And you might notice a real difference in, you know, the pain going down if you can give yourself a little silent retreat. My friends are carrying around whiteboards, you know, they were, and honestly, like for weeks at a time, it was very serious for some of them because they've been doing musical theater without the right training. And I mean, it was really intense. They were like months.
Yeah. And vocal rest can be extremely helpful after an injury or something like that, but you want to make sure you're addressing why the injury occurred. You know, vocal rest can help heal certain things, but you want to make sure that your technique is, you know, sound, and that you're going to be producing speech in a way where you're not going to have those vocal issues reoccurring. So, but vocal rest does work wonders for helping to, you know, heal the voice in certain situations, but you got to know what the underlying problem is.
Yes, you got to unlearn and relearn. You know, sometimes it's habits, like Carolyn was saying, a lot of times just unlearning and relearning habits. And you spend your whole life, I think, unlearning and learning habits in all aspects of your life to perform at your best.
So sorry, really quick, just one thing I wanted to address you talked about like caffeine, which is true. Caffeine is drying. And alcohol is drying. So we generally want to, you know, you don't need to like cut it out, but just, you know, avoiding it, keeping it like to lower levels is healthy. You were talking about the GERD diet, I think, or the reflux diet.
Yes.
So not everybody needs to be on that if you don't have reflux, you know. So if you don't have reflux, because I was just wondering if people would hear that and think like, wait, if I'm a singer, I shouldn't have chocolate.
Sorry. We were still in the GERD conversation.
Yeah.
Somewhat, but it wasn't entirely clear. Yeah. That's not for everybody. You do not have to give up mint if you, that's
but caffeine and alcohol are drying, and that's kind of, any voice user should at least be aware of that. You know? Yeah.
All right. Shall we go on to the next question? Well, okay, let's talk about Zoom for a second, since we're on Zoom. Carolyn, how do you coach people to talk on Zoom? Is it different?
Speaking on Zoom sometimes makes people feel like they're performing, and it's unnatural in a sense. Somehow the telephone seems natural, but seeing yourself and seeing other people in this box, so one wants to talk in a relaxed way, but still on the breath. So it's, and you don't have to feel like you have to zap through the screen or whatever. And you can turn off, you've got a microphone, you can turn it up and down yourself, and they can too when you're speaking.
That's true.
So it's mostly a psychological thing. It's okay to just be where you are and how you are, and you don't have to sell because you're on screen.
It's a good point. I definitely know I'm talking louder than I probably need to. But since I can't hear myself other than on the screen, I assume that I need to be projecting a little bit more.
I've caught myself doing that, the same thing.
Yeah. It's weird. And it's probably, not healthy. That talking, I mean, you keep setting a good example of projecting and speaking higher, like Britta said, and I'm like catching myself. It's going to be a while before I train myself to speak in a higher register on a regular basis, because I am really used to speaking in that lower tone, and I know better.
Exactly. But what it takes is attention and focus. And as we know, what we focus on, we attract more to us. So with my speaking clients, I have them read and record yourself and read to me. And particularly using the breath, they'll be saying, 'twas the night before Christmas and all through the house. There's no creatures were stirring, not even a mouse. And so many people, when they're speaking, go at the end of the sentence, and they don't use their breath all the way through the sentence. That makes a big difference, because if you're continuing it, then it's easier to continue it. But if you keep dropping it, you have to start over again. So I just wanted to throw that in about, again, the breath and using it consistently.
That's so good. Yeah, that's important. I know, Beraud, do you have anything you want to throw in about Zoom exercises? I know Britta has some exercises she wanted to share with us, but I want to give you a minute or two before we throw it over to Britta for those exercises.
Yeah, I mean, on Zoom, you can adjust your volume. So like, I just speak my normal volume, and if people can't hear me, that's their job to tell me, and I'll turn myself up. Or I'll if I have like a headset, I'll put the microphone closer. Because some people have told me they couldn't hear me before, and I'll just like raise my volume a little more. Because I'm always of the fear of I'm too loud. Because I have been in Zoom meetings where one person is like crazy loud, and it's their volume. It's not even their voice, it's their volume. So I always like try to err on the side of being quieter, actually, because I'd rather be.
People will tell me if I'm too loud. I feel
like. No, you guys are fine. Are totally fine volume. But like sometimes I've been in meetings where like one person, their volume is like crazy. Like I've had to tell people to turn their volumes down. And then like apparently on Chromebooks you can't turn it down. So like some people you can't get it at all. You just have to speak quieter. But yeah, if people can't hear me, just turn it up, or if I'm too loud, turn it down.
Every day is an adventure with technology. This has been so great having you all. I want to give it over to Britta because she has some what she calls we didn't know this word, semi-occluded. Vocal tract exercises to share with us. So take it away, Britta.
Really quick though, I just wanted to say, Beraud, that's so smart. Just like using technology when you're using technology, having the microphone so you can just speak totally normally, and just kind of putting the onus on other people, like turn it up if you can't hear me. Like I'm not gonna push, I'm not gonna strain myself. I think that's really great tip. And I also feel like using the mic when it's closer to your mouth, you are going to naturally speak more softly because you're perceiving that like, oh, this mic's picking it up. And also, Carolyn, what you said about the habit that some people have of going down in pitch at the end of their sentences, that is such a hard ingrained habit for people like millennials, basically people of our generation. I hear like Gen Xers and stuff doing it a lot too, but it's a speaking kind of like habit that we have, and it does make it really hard to stay on that optimal pitch. And I do it all the time, where at the ends of sentences you go down into your vocal fry, and it's not necessarily unhealthy. Vocal fry actually isn't necessarily unhealthy if you use it occasionally. And all people do use it occasionally. It's just if you are doing it 100% of the time, or if you're doing it all the time at the ends of your phrases, it can have some risks of possibly, you know, some misuse, basically. Sorry, but I just wanted to comment on that because you guys
good.
Such
That's
good
really
comments.
important.
And then really quick, so semi-occluded vocal tract exercises, you are occluding the end of your vocal tract, which is your mouth. And you are balancing the pressures, the air pressure both above and below your vocal folds, which basically just makes it so that your vocal folds can vibrate really nicely and optimally, so they can just come together really smooth, and it takes that pressure off. So it's pretty much impossible to injure yourself vocally while you're doing this. It just sets you up in a really nice place for these warm-ups, so that you're going to be using that really great pressure. Your folds are going to be coming together beautifully. It just does the work for you. So one way to do it, there's a lot of different ways, is to use a straw. That's one of the most popular ways. I have my singing straw here. The straw that you want to use for semi-occluded vocal tract exercises should be about the size of a coffee stirrer. If it's bigger, it becomes easier because you have a larger tube to, you know, have air go through. So if you have trouble with the smaller straws, you can start with a bigger one, and then, you know, once you get used to it, move down to the smaller one. The singing straw, I guess I think it's just, if you Google singing straw, you can find it. They come in a set of 3 stainless steel straws and a little brush to clean them. I really like it. And they're made, you know, for singers to practice with. So basically, you're just going to do any vocal exercise that you would do normally with the straw. So say we'll just do like a regular 5-finger pattern, you know, do, 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 do. We're gonna. And I don't know if you can even hear that on the mic.
Probably just a tiny little bit.
So it's that simple. Or for speakers that maybe aren't going to be doing things on pitch, like with a piano, you know, if you're someone who isn't a singer, you can just do slides. Just, you know, you're woo, but with the straw. So.
Nice.
So you can do that. And some more semi-occluded vocal tract exercises are singing on oohs and ohs, humming. So, you know, and lip trills. So that's also semi-occluded vocal tract exercise. So any of those you're gonna get that nice benefit. And then what a lot of people like to do, and this is a fun one, is I don't have a lot of tea left in here, and you shouldn't do it with tea, you should do it with water, but I just had tea for this. But you would have a little straw and you blow bubbles and you can kind of, you know, you blow bubbles. And for speakers, you can just kind of, you know, just kind of go up and down like, ooh, 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 like without worrying about pitch, just sort of move your voice up and move your voice down.
And that helps with your support too, right? Like if you're thinking about how to support the breath, you can think about what muscles you're using to some extent, right? Yeah,
it's definitely going to help with airflow. It's going to help you with utilizing that flow of breath in a nice, steady, smooth way. So it can be extremely helpful for that as well, because you're not going to be able to really utilize it unless you're getting that steady stream of air. And you can test by, you put your hand in front of it. You should be able, I feel a stream of air coming out of the straw. So and it's like steady and focused. So, you know, yeah. So that's the quick and dirty version of semi-occluded vocal tract exercises. If you want to learn more about it, you can just Google search them. Dr. Ingo Tietze has a few videos on the subject. He's like the master of that. So I would look up his videos. They're pretty famous already. And yeah, you can get lots of information about it online.
Well, you all were out of time. This has been such a wonderful hour. I have learned so much from each of you. And I want to have you back again, all as guests, and we'll talk about different things. Beraud, you'll be back with us in 2 weeks, I hope. We'll talk about social media platform switching and being on all kinds of different platforms. So I'm going to learn a lot from that show because I know nothing about a lot of new platforms. And next week, I'll have April Feet will be with us to talk about her book called The Sacred Pulse, which is about the flow of time. So I'll also have David Diaz and Jenny Chung will be helping moderate next week. So thank you so much to all my guests. And I hope that you have happy vocal performances in the near future that we can all attend. Please feel free to post all of your links and social media right here so that people can reach out to you if they'd like to. All right. Have a great day.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.